Welcome, everyone. We are many of us here in Johnston at our Iowa Land Records home base, and we will start with welcome and introductions. We'll just quick walk around the table so you know who's sitting in the room. Okay?
So then she.
And Ditzworth,
Denise Baker.
Stacey Garrett,
James Starkle.
Lynn Goodchild.
Julie Haggerty. Natalie Stephaner.
Dylan Malone.
Lisa Long. Kristen Delaney Cole walked out. She'll be right back.
Yep. So we are all here. And we will begin with the Boarding Committee meeting summaries. We have 3 of them to review. Were there any comments on any of them? Or changes? Updates? Okay. I would accept a motion on all 3 as a group if there were no changes. Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion or question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Okay. All in favor? It carries. Moving on to the financial reports.
We will defer to Samantha.
Okay. Yep. There we go. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Second quarter 2025 budgeted income came in at $593,912.02 with revolving there we go. Revolving income at $11,067,215.16 with gross profit of $11,661,127.18. Budgeted expenses came in at $432,037.48 with revolving expenses at $11,070,193.33 with total expenses at $11,567,310.75 with a total net income for the second quarter of 2025 at $93,816.43. Budgeted only for the first half of 2025. Budgeted income was $1,029,195.24. With budgeted expenses at $766,085.68. With a total budgeted net income of $263,109.56. Again, budgeted income at $1,029,195.24. During the first 6 months, if you want to scroll up just a tiny bit, Lisa, thank you. The money market interest income is $8,397.86. We do expect this to almost double in the second half of 2025. Bankers Trust was able to raise our interest rate to 3%, and in the month of July, we actually saw it at 3.04%. So this should at least double. We were seeing an average of 1.3% for the first 6 months of 2025. You'll notice point of sale income is higher than normal, higher than last year in 2024. This is a boat year and it did end in June, so we do think this is going to fall a little bit for the last 6 months. And then e-submission income is well above what we originally budgeted for the first 6 months of the 2025. Cost sharing and local service provider maintenance fees are about half of what we originally budgeted for the very first budget when we approved that in November of 2024. We were able to get the maintenance fees to a calendar year, so that is only for the last 6 months of 2025. Sorry. Okay, budgeted expenses, again, $766,085.68. And then the revolving expenses at $19,729,741.48, with total expenses at $20,659,223.97, bringing the total net income at $108,023.67. The Bankers Trust checking account at $651,382.14. This account actually has a $0 balance at the end of every single day. The amount here is the unreconciled transactions in the accounting software. The BT money market sweep account is actually where all of our money actually lives. At the end of June, it came in at $1,316,533.23, with total assets and liabilities equaling $2,939,346.99 for June 30th. The Fund 255 account beginning balance for June was at $156,391.02, with an ending balance of $166,067.52. Total receipts equaled $44,063.22. This is the amount of the Fund 255 reimbursement invoice that was approved in the August Finance Subcommittee meeting. And the balance sheet for the Fund 255 account with total assets and liabilities equaling $166,067.52.
Okay, Stacy, as finance chair, did you have anything else you wanted to add or comment on? Anything else from you, Sam or Phil?
I'm going to talk about most of my additional comments when we go over the budget.
Okay, very good. And are we in chat? Any questions? Or Zoom messages in chat? Okay, so accept a motion, excuse me, to approve the 2025 year-to-date reports.
So moved.
Travis has moved. Is there a second? Denise gets that one.
Okay.
So motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we move into our audit report.
I would just like to introduce Robert Endres. Robert is with Denman. He has previously presented the audit report to the Finance Subcommittee, and now it's your turn. Robert, I saw that you were on the attendee list. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Robert Endres, partner with Denman. Denman's was engaged to do the 2024 calendar year audit, and that audit report is in front of you. Apologize for not being able to be there on site today, but I had a commitment on the other side of the metro, which would have made it very, very difficult for me to be out there in person this year.
Robert, just to interject, just to help with the flow, just give a shout out to what page you're on so that Lisa can be sure to display what you want to display.
Certainly. So the page numbers here, I'm assuming would be consistent with the packet information, which I have as at page 21.
Yes.
So this document here is what we call a governance letter. And with every audit report our profession issues, we also issue this governance letter, which is our opportunity to inform you as members of governance about matters that we think really warrant the attention of governance. This is kind of our opportunity to shout out and say, hey, here are things you need to think about. Hopefully, in your capacity as a member of any board, you don't find yourself reading really alarming, exciting, interesting governance letters, because alarming, exciting, interesting audits are not ones we want to talk about. They're not fun. You're not going to have to today. This is a pretty standard, straightforward governance letter, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, other than to highlight right there in the middle of the page we're looking at there on page 21. This is a reminder, all financial statements do have estimates in them. We do evaluate management's estimates and make sure we think they're reasonable and appropriate, and we do. But it is important to recognize that there are estimates in these financial statements. And then right below it on page 22, some of the more important things I'm going to mention this afternoon. If I could have you turn down one page for me, Lisa, are you driving? There we are. Thank you. Toward the top there, those first three paragraphs, difficulties encountered in performing the audit, corrected and uncorrected misstatements, and disagreements with management. I do not have any difficulties to report regarding the audit. The adjustments we made to the financial statements are very, very trivial, and they're ones we make for a lot of entities. Your internal financial statements are very, very accurate, and that's something that you should take comfort in, knowing that the financial statements you're seeing from management, from staff, are very, very consistent with what we're issuing here today. And then finally, no disagreements with management. Staff have been fantastic to work with over the past all our years with the organization. That's certainly very true today as well. Jumping then to the audit report itself, if I could, which is going to be, I assume the next page is down. So this is page 24 of the packet. I'm actually going to scroll to the third page of this document, page 26 of your packet. This is our independent auditor's report. This 2 or 3 page letter walks through our professional standards and the standards and responsibilities of management. The short version of this is here, we're performing a financial statement audit, the exact same type of audit that you get the privilege of going through at your local counties. Those same professional standards and requirements are being applied here to ESS. Management is responsible for ensuring these financial statements' accuracy and ensuring there are controls in place to support the accuracy of the statements. Our responsibility as your auditors is to perform that audit and to express an opinion on whether or not management's financial statements are accurate. For us to do that, we first start by assessing those areas of risk. Where do we think there's most likely to be an error to the financial statements? And then we develop audit strategies to help us mitigate those risks. So major risk areas for all engagements is always going to include things like management override of controls, that possibility that management might circumvent practices and processes. And our standards require us, for example, to develop audit strategies to mitigate that risk. We're going to look at transactions and balances. We're not going to simply assume that management's control environment is successful. Revenue recognition is also a very higher risk area for most engagements, and we do believe it's a higher risk area for this organization too. Not because there's anything wrong with what ESS does from a revenue recognition perspective, simply because it's complicated and riskier, and it has a big impact on the financial statements. So we do a lot of testing around those balances. We're looking at supporting documentation. We're independently confirming accounts and balances. We're doing analytical procedures. All that then allows us to roll that information together so we can express that opinion. And the opinion is there in the second paragraph of this document. We call this an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. That's the highest level of assurance our profession can provide regarding the accuracy of the information we're looking at here this afternoon. One quick caveat here that I will note in this letter, just because it looks a little different than last year. The last 2 paragraphs on page 26 are a little different than your average audit report. There was a small change in our professional standards this year. Every once in a while, our profession changes the rules on organizations. We changed the rules a little bit related to compensated absences. So we're simply acknowledging that their staff adopted that standard without a whole lot of impact on your financial statements. And then the very bottom paragraph on this report, basis of accounting, just as a reminder that Fund 255, which is housed within the state's accounting system, is excluded from these financial statements. The state manages that fund, and it's incorporated into the state's audit. The ESS audit only covers those ESS cash balance accounts and the activity running through those accounts. Jumping real briefly just to take a quick snapshot on the financial statements. Lisa, I'll have you scroll a good 5 or 6 pages down to the balance sheet. This will be, looks like probably page 32 or so of the packet. There we are. Yep, 32. Yeah, I had it right. Just a couple of highlights here. This is the balance sheet for the year end December 31, 2024. You have the prior year to compare against. Right in the middle of the page there, you see total assets, 2,781,000 compared to last year's 2,917,000. The biggest event driving that decline in assets is depreciation expense. The organization has invested heavily over the past several years. Um, in self-developed software. This year, we're seeing that expense occur because that created an asset that we're amortizing over a several year period. So that's why you're seeing the slight decline there in total assets. Liabilities totaling about 500,000. This increase over the prior year is because of what we call SBITAs, subscription-based IT arrangements. We have a multi-year engagement contract for these subscription-based services that were entered into in 2024. I believe these were server and file room storage. Phil, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong on that front. But that creates an asset and a liability that was not historically been there. So that's what we're picking up this year there. Sliding over real briefly to the income statement, the following page. Revenues were up this year, 36.8 million in total. You can see that about 1/3 of the way down, that for a subtotal. So a good jump there from the prior period. We're still not back to where we were in 2022 when the market was moving, real estate market was moving a little faster, but still a good 10% jump in revenues in the past year. Expenses grew right alongside at 37.2 million in expenses in the current fiscal year. Change in net position, that's your income, net income, net loss, a deficit of right about 400,000. You'll note if you scroll back up into those expenses, it is almost identical to what depreciation was. Depreciation of 398,000. So the operations of ESS broke even for the fiscal year. What it did not do is cover that long-term investment, the cost of building those programs and software that you're taking advantage of in calendar year 2024. To reflect that just a little bit differently, the following page is what we call the cash flow statement. Busy schedule. What I'll point you to is that first subtotal, net cash provided by operating activities, to the good of 150,000. What that's telling the reader here is that your day-to-day operations, the cost to incur to run the system, is generating just a little bit of extra cash flow. Not a ton, $150,000 this year. That is being used to reinvest in your systems. So right below it, you can see that reinvestment in capital assets and IT subscription services. Net change in cash pretty modest, about 70,000. Ending cash at the end of the year, 1.6 million, a healthy cash balance, but do bear in mind that your organization's churning about 3 million a month. So that 1.6 can move pretty quick. I'm going to point you next to the very last couple pages of our audit report, skipping over some information here on note disclosures. These pages right here, pages 39 and 40. Along with our audit of the financial statements, that opinion that we looked at maybe 2 or 3 minutes ago, we also have a responsibility to gain an understanding of the control environment. We're not testing controls. That's typically not a thing a CPA firm is going to do in any normal engagement. But we do have a responsibility to gain an understanding of those controls. And that helps us perform better audit procedures, helps us identify broadly risk areas. And as we gain that understanding, if we identify deficiencies or failures in control environment that we think are noteworthy, we have a responsibility to investigate those and elevate them to you as members of governance regarding those control deficiencies. So this letter takes a good 2 pages narrative, explains all that. And identifies the fact that we do not have any deficiencies in internal controls that we identified during the course of our audit work. So that gaining an understanding of those control environments did not result in us identifying significant deficiencies or material weaknesses as part of that work. That kind of covers my planned remarks for you this afternoon. Can I answer any questions over the financial statements, our audit work, those control concepts we talked about?
Robert, I would just ask you one question. I know that we've kind of said this before, but just to restate it, would you characterize the audit that you have done to be similar to audits that are performed for other 20 organizations or other political subdivisions?
Correct. So all 28Es, all political subdivisions, all local governments effectively follow the same auditing standards called government auditing standards. ESS has to follow those same rules. We apply the same procedures we do at ESS to a dozen other 28Es that we audit, to a dozen cities that we serve as well. It's the same principles, same standards, same audit concepts for all those different local governments.
I have some comments, but I want to be quiet until questions are answered.
Are there any questions in the room? Hearing none.
I'm checking the chat pod. No questions there either. This is Phil speaking. I just want to again express my appreciation for the work of the audit team. Those of you who have been on the committee in prior years have heard me say this before, but every time we go through an audit, we learn things, we gain new perspective, we deal with changes. One of the most frustrating things in the last year or so has been the fact that if you look at the entire P&L statement, it doesn't look so great, but that's because our depreciation has been so high. I think the true measure of how well we are doing is the budget. How well are we doing on the budget? That's what we can control. The rest of it is pretty much all revolving or course of whatever the government accounting rules are in a particular year. Another thing I want to comment on is that recently we had a week where distributions to counties exceeded $1 million. Now, that doesn't happen every week, but it does happen. And we just happen to have a really big week. And I have heard some express questions about why do we maintain a cash balance that's over $1 million? And that is because we have cash flow requirements that counties expect to get their money on time. Now, it doesn't happen every day, but on a normal day, on a normal week, we are very diligent about getting distributions done so that counties receive their money on time. If we did not maintain a cash balance that was sufficient, we would have to wait for income to come in before we could make a distribution. So if anybody has the impression that we are whirling away funds for no reason, that just is not true. A big part of our job is to receive funds and then to disperse it. And that's why a cash balance is necessary. So I have said before, and I'll stand behind it, that, that's one of our main missions is to make sure that we keep the flow of commerce going. And that's why things are the way they are. Our budgeting practices, which I'll talk more about later, when we talk about the budget amendment, are intended to be somewhat conservative. We don't overestimate income, and we try to be very conservative in terms of our handling of expenditures. So I think this audit is another reflection of that. The other comment that I would make is that the audit process itself, I'm kind of repeating myself, but it's a learning experience. Every year we deal with a new set of rules, a new set of requirements. The homework that we do gets longer every year because of those changes. The Zenman Group provides us with such an efficient process for reporting everything that we need to report that by the time audit week shows up, we want to make sure that we've done our homework, literally have completed our homework, so that really the process is more of an affirmation than a check. So the Zenman audit team does a great job of that, and I really would give a great deal of the credit to Robert. So, Robert, thank you for all you do. And just because I said nice things about you doesn't mean that I expect you to cut us any slack in the future.
Well, I appreciate all that, Phil, and I feel like I'm stealing some thunder from my staff, who definitely do the heavy lifting here and are responsible for making sure the audit goes smoothly and is organized. So I'll be sure to pass on the kind words to them as well.
I think it's worth noting that Samantha did most of the homework this time, which is very different from years past when Phil and I did most of it and spent much of the audit week gathering. Okay, you need that report. Let me generate that for you, and then going to the developers for help. So the portal that Denman has that allows us to slide everything in there makes life really, really easy. And we learned this year there's some other things that we need that Samantha has kept a list of, so that next year we'll have those ready and we won't be running.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that. Samantha's been a great addition to the team, and we really appreciate all the work that she has done. Other questions for Robert? The next step would be we would ask the committee to approve and accept and approve the audit, and then we will be filing it with the state auditor's office.
I would just like to thank Robert and his team at ILR for putting together, for every year having a clean audit. It's not easy. I can't even do my income tax return, so. I appreciate that. It gives confidence, and I appreciate the finance committee for staying conservative and letting us have some cash flow, a cash balance. I think that's very, very important. That's how we've always operated, and I think that conservatism is good in this case. You never know what happens. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that every year we'll have a clean audit.
Their comments or okay, hearing none, I would accept that motion to accept and approve the audit for filing with the state.
Thank you.
Also,
Jamie and Jolynn, motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none is I would accept motions to approve as aye.
Aye.
Opposed to the motion? Motion carries.
Yeah, thank you.
And then we'll move into e-submission trends.
I'm just monitoring the participant list to make sure that we're ready to go. If we need to, because we're moving quickly enough that we can ship a few items out of the budget until certain people arrive. I want to just start with the chart here. If you could maybe hide that, that would be great. Okay, so the way we've ordered some things in the agenda this time around is that I've tried to purposely put some decision making ahead of the budget amendment, just so that any decisions that might affect the budget, you can go ahead and make those. Really, everything goes together, so it really doesn't matter one or the other. But I want to just start the discussion about the e-submission trends. This, if you look at the chart for the month of July, you can see that really for the first time in quite a while, we've actually equaled the numbers for 2021, which generally speaking, if you follow the pattern, in most years there's a bit of a dip in July, and that did not happen this year. We did have a slight increase. We basically we're approaching the 35,000 document level. So I would just share with you that from my perspective, and again, you've heard me say this before, I'm not a professional economist, but I do read the Wall Street Journal pretty closely. And given all of the news in the marketplace and uncertainty that's been created by tariffs and other things that are happening in the world, I just would say I did not expect in any way that the level of recorded activity would have been what we have experienced in the first half of the year. It's in some ways defies explanation. Now, Anne had the answer. She said it was all generational wealth being transferred, but
It's a lot of it, I think. I mean, we're seeing a lot of big land transfers. I don't know if all counties are feeling that, but I mean, that's a factor that the philanthropy world, which is where I came from, we'd been studying for a while. We knew it was coming. So that's why I don't think that's totally answered, but it's certainly a factor. Those land sales are huge.
And I think people are just getting to the point, this is it. What's not going out, not maybe it's the new.
But that's one transaction or 10 transactions, whatever, as opposed to the mortgages and the
Assignments.
big, what?
A lot of assignments.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Bit of revenue.
That was, Wells Fargo to Freedom something a couple weeks ago. The week of the large submissions, most of those were Polk and Dallas with the large distributions. And I think they were, older adult communities that were being transferred at $35 million at a time. And there were lots of them.
okay. So with that in mind, when we get to the budget discussion, one of the things that I would just point out, if you like church, this is a good example. We've had a very good 6.5 months. We're not taking that to the bank on the second half. Still, our approach in terms of expected revenue, I think, is reasonably conservative. Have not made a lot of changes there, and we are accumulating some resources that can go into the reserves, but I don't think you're going to see a big surge to spend money unless there are some specific strategic targeted activities that you want to pursue. The next item on the agenda actually isn't in your main packet. We did distribute, just FYI, because we've done it before, a copy of our annual report. And the annual report is a little bit bigger this year. That is because of general dialogue in terms of who is the ESS and where does their money come from and what are they doing and why are they doing it that way. We decided to have a little bit of overkill in terms of the information that we were provided. So I would just recommend to you, if you have not taken a few minutes to digest this, please do so. If you have stakeholders or constituents or specifically state policymakers that have questions, then be sure to review the annual report and just know that it's available for download on the website. Okay, that's all I've got on that. I'm not going to go into it in any great detail. Let me check the chat pod here and the attendance list. So the next person on the agenda is Bob Rafferty and Nick Laning. And I see that Bob is in the list. Bob, could you unmute yourself and say hello? And is Nick with us at this time too?
I know Nick was going to join. I think he had 145 on. Let me just text him really quick and let him know. I'm just going to call him. Make sure he gets on.
He's just not talking very loud. Basically, he said Nick was anticipating 145.
Okay.
So he's going to text him and see if
If the committee
Nick,
would,
they're ready for you. They're ready for
okay.
us. You want to jump on? Okay,
Yeah, I can.
thanks.
all right, let's go. With it.
Can you hear me better now, Lisa?
Yes.
Yes.
Talk loud, Bob.
Well, here, let me even try this. Is this better?
Can you hear me?
No? Disappointing. Hold on a second. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Is it faint? Should I speak loudly?
You sound just fine.
You're fine.
Okay. Okay. Terrific. Terrific. And I really want Nick to be on so we can do this as a team. In fact, I think he was going to lead the discussion,
I'm on,
and
Bob.
he had 145. Oh, hey, Nick.
Yeah.
So I just like to jump on to just, start picking up some extra stuff along the way, such as that trend, which was pretty interesting of the filings. Nick, I'm going to hand the floor over to you. And Bill, just for clarification, do you want us first talking about the consulting engagement proposal, which is similar to last year, except for the fact that now we're also going to be working with the county recorders itself as a client in addition to ESS. But we're also prepared to talk just to have a legislative update.
My answer is if you would like to start with the engagement letter, that is fine. But we also want to generally have a discussion about what our observations are around fee policy and what's maybe happening in the near future about that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
I'll start, and then I'm going to hand the floor to Nick. I'm just going to be really brief as it relates to the engagement letter, because it's really modeled after our last, really probably very similar to the relationship we've had for several years now. The fee is also it's less than last year's, and that's taken into consideration several factors. One of which there'll be there'll obviously be a lot of coordination in regards to the county recorders. But what I'd like to do, and before we get to that, I do want to say that obviously this has been a long relationship. We've gone through many wars, many ups and downs. And last year was obviously a tough one, difficult one. Certainly for us, it was, some years are more time consuming than others. And obviously that was all consuming. And we're optimistic that there's some, real terrific potential ahead. So with that, why don't I hand the floor over to Nick? Let's do the legislative summary. And then if I can suggest, if there's questions on the actual engagement letter, we can do that at the end. If at least that would be my recommendation.
Sounds good. Nick, you're it.
All right, thanks everybody. Hi, you guys are ahead of schedule, so I'm glad Bob gave me a call to jump on. But I just a quick general overview update, and then we'll talk about the fee policy in particular. I think for a general update, there are a lot of things moving around at the State House. So the at the end of last session, there was the big debate on the CO2 pipeline eminent domain issue, where 12 Senate Republicans joined Senate Democrats to pass an eminent domain carbon pipeline bill. And they sent it to the governor, and the governor vetoed it. And that had very, very strong House support as well. So the relationship between the governor and the House Republicans is very tenuous. Is probably a positive description of that relationship right now. Over the CO2 pipeline debate, we've heard from House members and Senate members that will be the defining issue going into next session again, along with property tax reform. I will also note that we have some discussions about leadership changes in the legislature as well. On the House side, Representative Matt Winchell, the House Majority Leader, stepped down to run for Congress because Congressman Randy Feenstra is largely expected to announce his run for governor in the next month or two. And so Leader Winchell will be keeping his House seat, but he has stepped down. And then Representative Bobby Kaufman from Cedar County, who was Ways and Means Chair, is now the House Majority Leader. The Ways and Means Chair is currently vacant. There's a few names being discussed out there of who could fill that role. We expect to hear that here in the next month or two as well. That's a decision up to the Speaker and his leadership team to appoint. And that's very important to the fee policy because the Ways and Means Committee, as you all know, is where fee discussions occur. And so then on the Senate side, Senator Jack Whitver continues, the Senate Majority Leader continues to undergo cancer treatment. And he's fought through it really well and, been praying for him, supporting him through that. However, there have been discussions on whether he will continue as leader or not. There's some, that caucus is having, I would call it family discussions ongoing after session last year on how that will happen going forward, and if there will be a leadership change or not. A few months ago, I probably would have said yes, there will be, but now it's not as clear on who and if there would be a leadership change. So only time is going to tell on that piece. All that to say that the Iowa legislature is there's a lot of moving parts. There is a special election up in Sioux City next Tuesday. It's a state Senate seat. Unfortunately, Senator Rocky DeWitt passed away from a years-long battle with cancer. And so there's a special election up there. Democrats are targeting that seat because if they pick that seat up, they break the Senate Republican supermajority. And Republicans would like to hold that supermajority because a supermajority allows you to confirm appointments without any votes from the minority party. So that could change another dynamic in the legislature next session. So that brings us all to there's a lot of unknowns still going into next session. We're waiting to see on some leadership changes, key committee changes, those sorts of things. But then also House File 1031 and the fee policy continue to have discussions with the new recorder legislative chairs and the recorder leadership after your guys' summer school meeting for the recorders. And how do we approach this? How do we overcome the resistance to what some stakeholders have called a doubling of the fee or a large fee increase? We all know it's a lot more nuanced than that. And how do we come to legislators with a unified message to senators, especially since the bill sits in the Senate Ways and Means Committee, we've done work with stakeholders, we've done work with the recorders and Iowa land records, and we think we have a path forward is how we think is the best opportunity to move this piece forward. A lot of feedback we got was there's different points of view from the recorders. We're hearing different things and those sorts of things. And it was a growing experience. And I think there's opportunities to make all those things work together to hopefully move something forward. Now, there's some key stakeholders that need to be brought along in that discussion. So our next steps in literally the next week or two is starting to kickstart meetings with the bankers and then the bar and realtors and some of those other key stakeholder groups to discuss what is the art of the possible on the fee policy and House File 1031. How can we work together and can we bring those folks along? And our goal and what I would hope we can find a way forward is to have them okay with a proposal and then the recorders on board with a proposal come January, and we can tell lawmakers that now that is the ideal world. I'm not going to say there's not going to be bumps along the way or anything like that, but that's kind of the path forward we've discussed with recorder legislative leadership and ILR, and we hope to move that forward. And we've appreciated all the work we've done together. As Bob noted, it was a busy one this last session. We saw a lot of you a lot of times at the State House and lots of meetings in between there and last minute amendments and discussions and everything like that. But we hope that you found our representation to be professional and responsive and proactive. And we look forward to hopefully our continued work together and happy to answer any questions.
I'm going to give you a tough one right out of the gate, Nick and Bob, and that is, we're sort of alluding to the possibility that there might have to be some compromise on the fee structure itself. I wonder if you could uh, at least give a brief overview of what some of those options might be and sort of where, if you can at this point, give some indication about how that might move either a legislator or a stakeholder group.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think to keep it general, because we don't know what the openness or appetite is yet from especially the bankers. That's where we want to start. Um, I think is there a way that we can structure a fee? Maybe we phase it in over time. Maybe there's a cap on mortgages or something like that. But everything would be run through ILR and the county recorders for feedback and approval. That's how we process anything. But we really need to have stakeholder buy-in for any of those things to even be discussed. Because if it's not going to move a stakeholder, or a legislator that has concerns, then that proposal is not worth us pursuing. That's the goal
We
here.
we we knew that there was a huge roadblock in the Senate because there were senators that were not inclined to push for that type of a fee increase, but perhaps even most importantly, a key stakeholder who was opposed. So we need to get the temperature to see what is the art of the possible, and then we can start kind of start that exploration from there. And when we say exploration, we get a sense of where they're at, and then we can come back to ESS and the recorders and discuss what we're hearing, so that ideally, the ideal. I'm not saying I expect to get there, but I think we should at least try to get there. Is to see if we can establish agreement on how to move this forward before session starts.
So what I hear you guys describing is that there are conversations that can take place in the not too distant future to gain some insight about alternatives that might be acceptable or more make certain constituencies more amenable. And obviously, we can't predict that today, but that's the general direction that you would be doing in terms of your advocacy efforts.
Correct. And to a certain extent, I guess I'd phrase it, we want to take the temperature. We don't want to start negotiating against ourselves in particular, because yes, but we do want to get a sense of, is there room? Is there room to have a conversation there with some key players?
Okay, I want to make sure that all the committee members have ample opportunity to ask you questions. I'm going to take you down a quick description of the engagement. So as you pointed out, Bob, the engagement letter itself, if you compared the one that's before the committee today, is not really that much different than the engagement that we had in 2024. I'm sorry, in 2025. So the engagement is actually for calendar year 2026. You are already engaged to represent ESS through the end of the calendar year. But then under the new engagement, it would actually be structured so that there would be a separate engagement, but related with the County Recorders Association, and then a similar one with ESS. We're taking action or proposing to take action on the ESS part of that today. The other thing that you said, which is accurate, is that if you compare the engagement in 2025 with ESS with the proposed engagement in 2026, the actual dollar amount is less than in 2026 than it is in 2025. Part of that is because we're marrying forces here, not directly, but indirectly, as there's a similar request that will be before the County Recorders Association Executive Board. So this is step one of that engagement process. But right now we're operating under the current engagement. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that summarizes it, but we're happy to answer questions.
Okay, are there any questions here in the room about Rafferty Group and our letter of engagement? Comments?
Just so everybody understands, this is for ESS and the Recorders Association is gonna be separate for those that.
Correct.
Yep. So we'll have two different distinct, clearly available to anyone to review agreements.
And then part of it, Bob has said in a different setting before, but if you examine sort of how events unfolded in the 2025 legislative session, it sort of became obvious that legislators really didn't have a strong distinction or differentiation between who are you representing? I think they frequently thought, oh, you're representing recorders. And in a way, that is true. But this would sort of kind of remove the need to explain the difference. They'll just be able to say, yeah, we're representing recorders. Yeah, we're representing ESS too.
Well, that when modernization bill comes around, that'll be. I mean, it's gonna be broke anyway. But separately, I get it. I mean, that's what, I guess that's.
Right.
That we like to get the stakeholders buy-in, that's important for ESS and for recorders.
Yes, it is.
So clearly we've had a long relationship and it's been successful and trusted. Is there a motion that we would like to make in support of this engagement letter?
I move to support the draft.
Okay, Julie has made the motion. Is there a second? Jamie has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Questions? Okay.
We are ready for action.
Motion to approve, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is carried unanimously.
Well,
Bob,
thank you
Nick,
for
thanks
that.
taking
We
the time.
appreciate that vote of support, and we
Yeah,
look
thank
forward
you.
to
We appreciate
continuing.
all the work together.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Yep, you too. Thanks, everyone.
Mrs. Brick Gentry.
We're ready.
Very good. Perfect timing. Our friends from Brick Gentry, yep, just have arrived, so we will
So allow me to make an introduction. I'd like to introduce two people I'm very familiar with. Steve Brick, representing the Brick Gentry Law Firm. You know, he might have some family association with them. I don't know. And then Paul Gray, also representing the Brick Gentry Law Firm. You may not know the history of this, everyone, but I can tell you that in 2010, the ESS Coordinating Committee conducted a search for a law firm to represent them. And part of that was because between 2005 In 2010, world got a little bit more complicated. There were expectations. We happened to have a certain privacy event that came up in that time that compelled the committee to say, we really shouldn't just rely upon the ISAC legal counsel. Maybe we need to have some help on our own. So an RFQ process was conducted. There were about a half a dozen firms that responded to the RFQ and said, hey, we would like to be the attorney representing this new thing called ESS. And so interviews were conducted. We actually conducted those interviews in the offices of ISAC when they were down at River Point. I forget what the name of it was, but before their current location. And so that was done. And each year, similar to what you just did with the Rafferty Group, we have had an engagement letter with the Birch Gentry firm, and they have represented us and worked with me on many, many, many occasions to do the things that lawyers do. I would want to.
Depends on the day and
Yeah.
who you ask.
Some of you may recall Steve gave a presentation over in Dubuque, I think it was, or you weren't there, but you were on screen about the unallowed practice of law, something like that.
Right, right.
So, generally speaking, what happens, and then I'll be quiet, is if something comes up or something's on the agenda, or if there's a contract that needs to be reviewed, usually these guys are on the end of my email. I'm saying, hey, I'm about to do something crazy again. Stop me if you need to. And that's usually the way it goes. And usually they do a good job of putting me on the right track. Probably the most recent and most substantive work that the Birch Gentry firm did was to help craft the 28E amendment that was presented to the legislature as legislation initially, and then to actually craft the 28E agreement amendment themselves. And Steve did most of the legwork on that. He did have to put up with me quite a bit in that process as well. But I'm going to be transparent with you. Most of the time, I don't believe in having attorneys sit at a table for no reason. I see this in city councils all the time. They have the council sit there and they don't say a bloody thing for the whole meeting. So we call them when we need them. Okay, that's what our practice has been. So the downside of that is that your legal counsel, who has served you well for many years now, you don't get to see them very often. So, since there could be a change somewhere in the not too distant future, we thought it would be a good idea to have them come and just give a short talk about who they are, what they do, answer any questions that you may have. We do not have an engagement letter on the agenda. Usually that happens in November. But there are opportunities for change ahead. At the same time, we've had a very strong working relationship with these gentlemen and other members of their firm over a good period of time, and you deserve to hear from them directly. Now I'm going to be quiet, but I'm going to throw two questions at you right out of the gate. Okay, so question number one is, if the legislature were to adopt House File 1031 as it exists today, removing the authority to establish policy, that is, in the same way that it does in Section 331-604 today, what would you generally envision that might need to happen with the 28E agreement? Just sort of speculated a little bit about what might be involved with that. Then, what was the other question I was going to ask you? Help me.
You had several. Who owns?
Oh, yes. The other main question that I wanted you guys to address, because they might believe you or not me, is the question about who owns Iowa land records and who owns the data and the images that are in the possession of Iowa land records. Now, I have an answer to that, but you've heard me say that before. I'm going to give it to these guys and have to ask you to. So start with self-introduction and then get to those two things.
Thank you for this opportunity to come and report. I know we worked with Phil pretty closely over the course of, geez, like almost 15, 16 years. So it's been a long time, but it's a pleasure to be here and meet all of you and to see all of you. I know on behalf of Brig Gentry, I'm the managing partner.
Sorry, can you guys do us a favor and stand on that side? We got some people that joined online and our speaker is unfortunately on this end, so we can hear you better. Thank you. So sorry about that. Do you want to sit?
Well, again, thank you for having us. My name is Paul Dre, and I'm an attorney with Brig Gentry and my partner Steve Brick. And we have worked with you for quite a while, as Phil had mentioned, going back to 2010. And it's been our pleasure to be able to do that. I'm going to let Steve answer some of the technical questions. I know he's worked a lot more closely with Phil on some of these issues. But in regard to our representation of ESS and working with all of you, it's really been a pleasure. I know Steve and I both have, Steve a little more extensively. My practice is mostly transactional. I work with some municipalities, but a lot of it's transactional, contractual. And so I know when we receive contracts and questions in regard to different contracts and those sorts of things, we're able to provide some thoughts in regard to that. And Steve working on this. We've worked closely with your team, I think, in many different ways over the course of the year. And I know, especially I know saw Bob Rafferty and his contract was just up. Bob actually was an attorney with our firm, I think, when we sort of were starting some of these conversations. So we've worked closely with Bob as part of your team and other things as well. So it's really been a pleasure for us to be able to have that opportunity to work with you. Phil's presented us with some unique issues that we've had to deal with over the course of those 15 years, but it's been both, I think, challenging because obviously the legislature has certain goals and different ambitions, sometimes not necessarily aligned directly with some of the efforts that we're trying, but working closely with Bob's group and Phil, I think hopefully we've been able, at least from a legal standpoint, to look at some of the language that may appear in some of those legislative contexts and be able to provide some legal backing or support for some of the agendas and items that you all have before you that you're trying to promote, and also protecting in regard to contractual and other relationships that you have from third-party vendors and third-party, I guess, other third parties contracts who may, whether it be that Department of Revenue, I know there's been, or other sorts of relationships that you have that we're able to sort of work with. So in regard to those two specific questions, I know, Steve, I'll let you talk and introduce yourself as well.
I'm Steve Brick. I've been practicing law since 1992, so it dates me a little bit, but about 50% of my practice is government in the governmental space. I represent a lot of cities in the metropolitan area, and some throughout the state of Iowa, and very involved in the governmental process, both in litigation as well as just representation. As Phil said, I'm the guy sitting in the end of the table that doesn't say anything. But in any event, I've worked with Phil and your organization since 2010. Boy, that dates me as well. I had hair back then and a little less weight. But as to the two questions that have been posed through the legislature's efforts this last session, I presume that those might occur in the next session as well. It's somewhat difficult. The question of governance, is somewhat difficult. I don't know if you're, the Constitution specifically prohibits government from interfering with an existing contract. So this organization is set up by mandate by the legislature way back when, requiring the creation of a contract, the 2080 agreement. The 2080 agreement, in this case, establishes the coordinating committee as the governing board. So legislative action, just wiping that out, is difficult. But who wants to be in litigation, right? Because the way we enforce the Constitution is we go to court. right? So would we want to sue the state of Iowa, who in essence created this and sort out the conflict between an existing contract and the prohibition in the Constitution prohibiting the legislature from meddling in a contract? I don't know. That's something the board will ultimately have to consider if that comes about. The next question relative to the pending legislation is who's going to govern? Okay, that's fine. We're going to prohibit or end the governance by the Recorders Association or the ESS Coordinating Committee. Okay, the next question is who governs it? If they're proposing to privatize it, you contemplate perhaps a sale. And that would require an appraisal process. For example, the law currently, and I'm going through this in the city, requires city utilities that are being sold go through 2 appraisals, get a valuation, publish that and distribute it to all the citizens, do an analysis, and determine whether or not it's in the best interest to put it to then the voters to sell the utility. Nothing in the proposed legislation has a process relative to how that privatization might work. Depending on the direction, we're private attorneys. We represent clients. You are the client, or the ESS is. And the governing board, we take our direction from. So a lot of this, the answers to those questions, what the next steps are, I would envision would occur in conversations with the legislature throughout Bob Rafferty's help and his group's help. Try to figure out what issues they're trying to solve and try to navigate that with the direction of the committee. As far as who owns it, couldn't be clearer. It's the 2080 entity. There's no question about that. The intellectual property rights, if there are any, and certainly the records. And the one thing that I didn't see much of in the legislative discussion that I've seen, and I'm not going to profess to have said to say that I've seen it all, is what happened. I mean, private companies want to monetize the database, right? So, but you have privacy concerns. These are people, I mean, Phil and I have these debates, but long and the short of it, they're property records. I mean, that's the part of the American dream, owning your own home. Are they going to monetize it by selling it to third parties? I didn't see much guidance relative to those particular issues in the legislation. Not to express an opinion on what they're trying to do or what direction they're heading, but at the end of the day, those are things that should be addressed. And certainly in any sale, that's part of the discussion. If that's where this is all headed.
Is there any precedent? What I heard a lot of this last year was that no other state has this. Is there a precedence at all for any other state that has an entity like Iowa Land Records?
Not that I'm aware of.
That has been proven, has a great track record, and is proven to be a great contributing to the community for 20 plus years. Hasn't had any difficulties. I've had 4 different software programs from the DNR and US Human Services. And it seems like they always have issues. And that's the state run. Those are state run. So my question is there a precedence anywhere? Are we creating this precedence?
I'm not aware of another land record system such as ESS.
Any system being run by us. For instance, if the clerk's office design their own system for vital records, or the treasurer's office design their own records to register cars. Of course, they work for the DOT, but that's another whole story. That's the state. I guess I'm just saying, is there another precedence that we can go to that says, hey, besides our record of 20 plus years, is there any other precedence that we can pull up that these? I mean, it's just ridiculous to have these conversations with the legislators. Because that whole thing was, well, there's not another state that does that. I go, isn't that amazing? And they don't find it amazing. And that drives me crazy. every time.
One property, I went to law school out of state, and so one of my professors always used to say, this is what happens in property law, except in Iowa. And there was different reasons for them saying that because of the way Iowa does things. But I mean, to your answer, I mean, Iowa does this really well. You've done a great job of trying to pull this together. I mean, being able to provide a service like this is, I mean, really a benefit to the people here in the state. So I know other states have different property rights laws and they do things differently in regard to insurance of their properties and why some of that information may be as significant or otherwise. But the protection of the chain of title and the way that information is provided is unique to Iowa, and you do a great job of it. Being able to
Well, Iowa's unique. Yes, well, we should celebrate it.
Instead of taking shots at it.
Taking shots at it, for God's sakes. I mean, I'm gonna have a difficult time being the liaison, I have to tell you. Because you have to deal with people that look at things totally different and they don't see something that's right in front of them and they don't see what would happen if the state took over. Just go to HR, HHA, whatever man you can say. Or the TNR. I mean, they didn't even come to, the Polk County had a system already in place for registering votes and snowmobiles in 1999 maybe. They didn't even come to our office to look at it. And we'd had it for 15 years. And they never used Polk County as a pilot. They never used Polk County as a pilot county. When we had everything that happened, and the first day that they had the vital records, I know I'm speaking to the choir, I know. But the first day that they had vital records, we had 3 problems. And they had to stop at everything because those were the 3 problems that Polk County had. No other county had it, but Polk County had.
Right.
They would just use this pilot county.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my problem, my thing is, I don't want to go after them, but I mean, maybe we should sue them.
They have to pass something.
Sorry, that's all I'm saying. I didn't mean that to be on the record. I'm just so frustrated. In my opinion, this is not, I'm not speaking to this group. I'm just saying, it's difficult.
It's very
frustrating.
As a lawyer, that's music to my ears. I'm kidding.
Can you explain, I guess, and excuse my not understanding, for those that say that 28E agreements, I guess, are not mandatory or can't go on forever?
Oh, that's not true. There is no restriction on.
Maybe I missed.
Metro Waste Authority has been around since like 1950.
So what would be the difference?
Say
Yeah,
they're
for
not,
participation.
they shouldn't be mandatory.
But they're not.
I will tell you, when Phil first contacted us and we went for the RFQ, we did a little homework, and I have never seen the structure, legislative structure, when it was first put together, being done the way it was. I won't profess to know the history. I can infer the history from that the state was interested in developing a statewide system and mandated it through the creation of a 28E and bootstrapped in the Recorders Association to keep the recorders somewhat happy. I don't know if that's, but I wasn't involved in the passage of the legislation. We just lived with it. But it's very unique. But they mandated it. Now you have all the counties on the 28E. It's got a very specific termination provision, and it requires legislative approval to terminate it. So I don't know if they're going to grant it.
Us to do it. Begin.
Yeah.
That's why they have to say it's okay. So not.
Right. And
So
when
does that make it a monopoly?
well, there's no law that says they can't or that a private company couldn't come in. The problem, there's logistical issues, in my view, for a private company to come in and create a duplicative system. One, they'd be competing against the existing system, which I don't think they could generate enough money to justify the expense in creating their own or running them. In addition to the data that they'd need to have to make their site work. Right? So I suspect it's more private concerns from the standpoint of creating a profitable entity in the private sector based on one, competition with Iowa Land Records or ESS, and the cost prohibitions to generating the data necessary because we're an abstract state. So, you know, and one of what two or last I heard, two, maybe three in the country. So I think it's just a different environment.
Guy here with us. Three. So,
There's two full states that are abstract. That's no.
In addition to Iowa?
No,
Okay.
including us.
Yeah. And then part of the. So why isn't everybody else doing?
Abstracts or
Nothing. Because we're so wonderful. I guess that's a few things I have heard from some legislators that throwing out the, it's a monopoly and not being mandatory. It's been a lot of, that's been discussed a lot or thrown out there.
Mhm. And when they use the term monopoly, I mean, I realize there's a possibility that counties want to do it on their own. I don't know if that's what they're saying, it's monopoly, that we don't want to be part of the ESS. Or if they're saying it's monopoly and that private companies can't come in. That is absolutely not true, except for to the extent that the cost prohibition and competing against Avalon. I don't think they could justify the costs. Would be my guess, but it's pure speculation. As lawyers, we just like to talk.
Sometimes the nature of a government organization is that if you are going to have a statewide system, everybody has to be in it, right? So, the question is, 28 years are voluntary. Whether is the suggestion coming from the state takes it over? I thought the main question was who owns the database and all of the info in the database. 28 years have been ongoing. It's because they didn't put an end date in it. It was valid until termination by one party. They are still voluntary, even if they are signed once and ongoing until termination. And then the most recent comment was, are there any other 28-year agreements that are codified?
Not as directly that I'm aware of, as the language that was used in the session law that created this entity. I mean, there's mandates relative to landfills, for example. You have to have landfills. And there's laws that basically give counties and cities the authority to have a landfill. So in that sense, yes, but the session law, to take you back to when this was created, specifically said each county shall participate in a 28E with the Iowa Recorders Association. I haven't seen anything.
That's the part that's probably somewhat unique compared to other 2080s. Other 2080s are parties come together and they enter into the sort of contract of the 2080. In this case, you have that sort of scenario, but you have the legislator that said that it was sort of a mandated requirement that you participate. So
right. And then the 2080 has a termination provision. That's the one we referenced, and it requires one, legislative approval, and two, 75% of the members concurring relative to termination. Now, withdrawal is a separate issue, but they'd have to be approved through, in essence, a legislative session.
I think reasonable people can have a difference of opinion. And I think that those who say that in 28-year organizations, it's sort of a conflict to say that you have to participate. That is unusual. On the other hand, the state legislature is the dominant policymaking authority in the state of Iowa. And if they pass a law that says everybody should participate, everybody should participate. Okay? And that didn't come from recorders. that came from legislators, okay? And so, in my experience, because I've administered things at different levels, if the legislature says do it this way, we did it. That's what we did. Now, if the legislature says don't do it that way anymore, convert your 28E organization to voluntary, we can do that. And I think from an administrative or legal perspective, we would carry out that order, right? But everybody has to understand that if you do that, maybe you don't have a statewide system anymore. So there's nothing inherently wrong for a state to say, I want a statewide system. Just like it's okay for them to say, GNR, go create a statewide system for licensing. And okay, you can have recorder's office help you disseminate the licenses. That's pretty common for government to do. Unfortunately, obviously, not everybody agrees with that. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And if the legislature passes House Bill 1031, I'm going to go to these guys and say, all right, we have our orders. How are we going to do that? Without emotion or hurt feelings, we'll do that. That's what we do, right? So I have one other tough question for you. And then I gotta let you go. You can have other business. So actually, one for you and then one for them. For you, there have been those who have implied that if my contract ends and I'm not serving as project manager anymore, that I somehow have the ability to take the records privately and do whatever I want to with them. Do I have that authority?
No, you do not.
So you can say to anybody that said, hey, Phil's going to take the records and go off and do something commercial with them, you would say, I can't do that.
Absolutely not.
Did I pay you to say that?
No.
No, I did not. Okay. For the committee, and then we'll move on. I want to thank you guys for coming and reintroducing themselves to you. But, as we go forward, depending on some choices that you make, there will be a new director or a project manager at some point. And they're going to need legal counsel. So be thinking about how you want to handle that. Do you want to be comfortable and continue on with this handsome guy? See that man? Or is there some other process that you want to do? And that's all legitimate, fair game, whatever you want. So, but I at least wanted to make sure you knew what the status quo was, and then it's up to you to take it from there.
We do appreciate this opportunity to come before you, reintroduce ourselves, and it has been a pleasure working with Phil and with your teams over the years. I look forward to the opportunity going forward, but as Phil said, I mean, your decision as to who you want to represent you, that's an important decision. We'd like you to consider us in that role, but I mean, like I said, it's important. So you have to be very happy and comfortable with who's making and you're working with as part of your team. So that will be an important decision you have to make as some of the changes transpire going forward. So.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure seeing all of you. Hope we didn't bore you too much.
You want to declare a 5-minute break?
Yes, let's take 5.
Okay, we're going to pause the recording and take a 5-minute break if you are online. You okay?
Yes.
Wait.
Okay, we're back from our quick break. And we are under contracts and agreements. We're at Iowa Department of Revenue, e-submission approval for the contract. Is this page 44? Correct?
That's it.
All right. There we go.
I'll take this one. So Our Department of Revenue has been a customer, an e-submission customer since the beginning, basically. Because they're a state agency, they have to follow certain procurement rules. And even though we're the obvious choice to be the e-recorded partner in Iowa, typically what they do is they go through a period of approving a master agreement that's good for about 3 years, and then they have annual renewals. We've been through the most recent master agreement with them, and now we're at the end of that 3-year period, and it's ready for a 1-year renewal. We'll have to do this each year for the next 2 years, in addition to what we're doing today. There's no change in policy. There's no change in fee. There's no change in their requirements for us to comply with certain confidentiality standards. This is simply a 1-year extension. Should be no controversy. I would add that we have had some discussion with the Department of Revenue about converting the agreement from a contract, as if we were just another vendor, to change it to an inter-organization 28-year agreement between the Department of Revenue and ESS. We talked about that the last time, but they deferred. And the main reason they deferred is because the 28-year agreement at that time incorporated the County Recorders Association directly. And so from their point of view, they couldn't enter into an agreement with a private entity under Chapter 28E. That issue has been resolved, but we have this existing agreement, so it's just easier for them to renew, and then we can talk about this again in another couple of years, or somebody. Okay. Again, so I would request your approval of this 1-year extension.
Jolynn will move. I'll start second. Julie says she will second. Any further discussion or questions on that matter? No, hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously, and we'll move on to the PEO health insurance plan approval.
Okay, we are on page 45 of your packet. Is Samantha still on or not?
Let me check.
So,
That's her right there.
Okay, Samantha?
Oops. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, stand by, Samantha. Please join in after I give the intro.
Okay.
Most of this is covered in the memo in your packet dated August 19th. And it outlines that we, as a team, we're preparing for our annual renewal of benefits under our employment agreement with Headchecks. That was where we were going. In July, we were informed that they would not be permitting us to participate in their healthcare benefit plan. And the main reason really had to do with the fact that some of our staff were no longer using the healthcare benefit plan because they have better alternatives, Medicare being one, and then operating under a spouse's plan. Okay, so we ended up having only 2 people that are in the plan, and then one of those people has had some substantial healthcare procedures done, I'll say it that way, that are not cheap. And so the underwriters made a determination that, hey, we can't afford that anymore, and we have to dump you. They didn't say it in that many words, but that's essentially what happened. So our benefit period ends on September 30th. So that means between the middle of July until October 1, we had to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? Because we have employees, we need to provide them with benefits. And since they raised the issue with us, we said to ourselves, since we aren't getting our health care benefits through them anymore, which is one of the primary motives, maybe we should just change professional employment organizations altogether. So credit, I'll say primarily to Samantha, but Samantha and Lisa, we undertook a research effort to go out and identify alternative PEO organizations and then at the same time, alternative healthcare benefit plans. And so the memo before you explains the process that we went through to reach this point. The result of that review identified one player that I would say was responsive, communicative, interested in having us be a client, and who offered a comparable healthcare benefit plan that actually turns out being less expensive than the one we had, okay, to the tune of about $24,000 a year. So as a result of that, we have undertaken a negotiation with them. And in your packet of materials is a cost analysis that is found in page 47. And then there is like a 6 or 7 slide outline that was provided to us by the company. Connectify is the name of the company. They're locally owned and operated. We have worked with Joel Duncan, who is on the next slide. Joel used to be with Merit Resources.
Oh.
Yeah, he used to be associated with them, and then he went out on his own. I don't know if he's the principal owner for sure or not, but he is a principal participant in this organization. So as a result of that, we asked them to provide us with a contract for their services, and that begins on page 55. So coincidentally enough, even though I didn't ask them about this, we have reviewed this contract with our legal counsel, Rick Gentry, just so you know that that has been done. Generally, we find the terms specified in the agreement to be acceptable, although we are going to ask them to modify a few indemnification provisions to be sure that their are as reciprocal as we can make them. None of the issues that were questions that we've identified I would consider to be a deal breaker, but we're not done with that conversation. Having said that, as a team and me as a project manager, I am comfortable enough with this agreement to ask your approval to proceed to establish an agreement with them effective so that on October 1, there will be no disruption in the delivery of benefits to our team, and to also work with Paychex, our current vendor, to terminate that agreement. We have discussed this with them, so this would not be a surprise. So with that, Samantha or Lisa, if you have other details that you would like to share, now would be the time.
Lisa, do you want to go back up to the cost comparison? Just so I can explain a couple things. So with I think Lisa and I met with about 15 or so different insurance companies, also a couple PEO companies like Connectify. And so with only 2 employees being on healthcare, we're not able to join anyone's like business healthcare plan. So every single insurance company that we met with, we'd only be able to have one. But as bad as that may seem, with the highest plan possible, only having one, we're saving $12,000 a year just in health insurance. Also with Connectify, their rate of increase for administrative fees is far less a year than what Paychex was upping our cost, I guess. So I don't know. So I guess it's just a huge savings. And this team is so responsive. Cindy has been so amazing to work with. The life insurance and health or life insurance for short term, no, sorry, not life insurance, short term and long term are a little bit more expensive, but as they gain more customers, that will go down. But overall, I just feel like this company, they're in Clive. We were able to meet with Cindy for coffee one morning. They're just a few minutes away. It's not a huge company that we have to go to person to person to person to get our answers for our questions. We'll have one person for our entire team to go to. And I just feel like it's a very good fit for what we're looking for and what we're needing.
I echo what both Phil and Samantha said. They have been really good to work with. Through some conversations I had for a committee I serve on, I'm aware of another organization that is switching to them as well. And their big thing is they're local. We like them. They're well experienced. So I think this is a good move for the organization.
So on average, with Phil leaving, there's potential that we're gonna hire someone to replace Phil. What's the cost of onboarding? In total, per year for insurance and stuff, for potentially 100%.
Lisa, if you want to scroll down just a tiny bit. So onboarding.
It would depend if the person hired chose to have single or family coverage. So
let's talk family coverage, that'll be the most expensive.
It's still going to be much less than we would with paychecks. Okay.
And ESS doesn't cover family, so it would just be the employee's percentage.
But it's comparable.
It's comparable or better insurance for much less money.
Yes.
Sounds like you hit a home run.
Yeah.
And they were also able to waive the $1,500 setup fee because, just imagine how much work it takes to get every single employee's information and get them completely set up. They were able to waive that for us as well.
Any other questions on that?
I want to just say one caveat. Okay. It looks great. 100% behind the change. We go through a year, they'll be underwriting. Okay. And we should not presume that everything's going to be exactly the same next year. But at a minimum, this buys us a year. Okay. If we had to keep looking, we could. We have two people who will receive comparable coverage at less cost. So I'm in favor of the change.
Any other questions from the group? Comments? Is there a motion?
Denise and Julie?
Yes. Any further discussion? None.
Thank you, ladies, for going through that work.
That was great.
That was great. Thank you.
Cost savings is always bonus. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Carries unanimously. And on to project management agreement.
Okay, this is the fun part. The packet that you're looking at, beginning on page 82, addresses an outline for a transition plan. I guess I'll let you guys speak for yourselves, but there was a meeting that was held involving both the ESS leadership and the Iowa County Recorders Association leadership. If you're really interested, you can go back and review the meeting summary that you approved earlier in the meeting. Okay. And as a result of that, we arranged a conversation between me and members of the ESS leadership to say, okay, what exactly does this look like, and how would we implement it? And so that is the origin of the transition amendment, transition description that is included on pages 82 and 83. In summary, try to summarize this. I gave you notice officially that I did not want to extend my contract through the entire year 2026 and gave you options as to what you could do next. Discussions were held, and as a result of that, an outline was conceived to say, I'll fulfill my contract through the end of this calendar year, as I would no matter what. And we would use that as an opportunity to plan for the transition as well as get ready for the upcoming legislative session. Then, subject to approval, there could be a contract extension, which you may recall in my original communication was to simply extend the agreement through June 30th. And this outline kind of breaks it into two parts. The first part would be an official kind of a hard extension from January 1 through March 31st, 2026. And the focus of that period would be to actually help you do the recruitment, help you do the selection of somebody to be the replacement. And assuming that that went well, then to actually make a hiring decision, possibly by the end of March. If it could happen faster than that, or it could take longer. We're not sure. We'll have to view it and find out. So that leaves open the question about, well, what happens with onboarding and what happens with a circumstance where it didn't happen as quickly as you wanted it to. And in that case, there would be an option to extend for an additional 3 months. So I can't speak for the others, but this is an outline that we came up with to describe what that might look like. And this is accompanied by an updated draft amendment, which is on pages 84 and 85. Included with that is a description of a modification to the scope of work to address the transition planning, to address the recruitment activities and the onboarding activities. And that can be found on page 86. I guess this just kind of brings it to a discussion to its conclusion about what do we do next. So I present it to you for your consideration.
Has everyone had a minute to?
Question. We had talked in our executive board meeting about the screening schedule, and my question is, are you open to, I mean, if it takes longer than we think, if you don't start this process till January, if it takes longer than we think, and I really believe that whoever retires is going to have to shadow you a certain amount of time. Are you open to extending it after June by month? Or would it have to be a whole quarter? Or what are you open to? Or are you open to anything?
I'll answer it this way. That as presented to you, it converts essentially to month to month, starting in April. So April, May, and June would be a month-to-month decision. The way this is written, assuming I won't make any assumptions, whoever the ESS chair would be in 2026, they would have the authority to say yes or no to that month-to-month extension. Procedurally, there would be an ESS meeting in May. And at that time, there could be some discussion about some various schedule or maybe an adjustment in work hours or cost or things like that. Um, I, uh, I'm not going to say yes, absolutely, but I'm not going to say no, never either. That's probably as good as I can do right now.
I appreciate that. I guess I just want, there's a lot on our plate. And I know we can do more than one thing at once. I would just like to do whatever we're doing the best we can, do it well. Now, looking for someone, the project manager, I'd like to make sure that we do that well and we don't have chaos of legislation howling all. So we need to be prepared for that next legislation season. That's not going to be over till March. So I see that we could probably be doing some interviewing, but I just don't see that you are going to be, I want you to be able to shout at treat this person that we're going to hire. And I think that I don't see, if we do it in the way that you have kind of laid out for us, I kind of see that we may need you for maybe start sometime after June, maybe. Once we're really, really good and we find them. So I guess I would just say, if we follow this year plan, not to do anything until January, which that's what we discussed, then can we say, I would feel more comfortable if, I know you can't tell me, but if you would think about it. if in April, if in March, you can see that we're not there yet, if you consider.
Two things. One is, I want the project to succeed. I want the project to be sustained. I've invested 22 plus years of my career to help bring you as far as I can. And this doesn't change any of that. And this isn't about being uncomfortable working with certain parties or controversy in the legislature. It really boils down to, what do I need to do at this stage in my life? Okay. Because if I could be immortal, I'd never leave. Okay. But I can't. So I think just know that I'm going to do everything I can to meet this deadline and to help succeed. I do think there needs to be a hard commitment to identify alternative office space by July 1 of next year, if for no other reason than to remove the cloud of people who might say that there is some sort of corruption or whatever word they want to use. I don't need that anymore. So probably that has to be something that we just say that really needs to be a hard thing, just to take that off the table. And to be able to say clearly to policymakers that might be subject to influence of misinformation like that, hey, this is a done deal. We're not going to be office there after July 1. Okay? Just get it off the table. And then you couple that with the commitment to try and actually complete a successful recruitment, then I think we can get there. There are certain mitigating factors that are beyond our control. So if there is not unity, if there is not a path to actually acquire some additional resources to do certain things. If it doesn't look like that would happen, to me, that makes it harder to recruit. Okay? So we all have to be committed to succeed and get the best thing that we can out of this legislature. I'm not saying accept anything, but the best thing we can.
As far as recruitment, I mean, my feeling is that it would be better to have the uncertainty of the modernization bill. So that whoever we do recruit knows what to expect.
Eyes wide open. Know what you're getting into.
Well, I'm going to say it this way. There's a lot of opportunity for improvement.
Welcome to Opportunity. Come work for us.
Opportunity Village right here. Opportunity Village.
Fields of Opportunity, isn't that what there's billboards about?
Field of Dreams, right here.
Fields of Opportunity. Yeah, I was thinking somebody had that big idea. Fields of Opportunity. Okay, good. So our other comments, and let's talk about this. Timeline or other thoughts you feel, whatever.
And what page do you want me to be on?
Oh, we're just talking about 82, the transition plan. I think we should ponder on that a minute. Silence. It's a lot to ponder, really. It's hard to fathom like how it will flow, and especially since we haven't really ever thought about the idea of next, the what next. So
I pondered it, didn't like it, but I thought
yeah, well, yeah, maybe seriously pondered, maybe I should say. So yeah,
I don't know about anybody else, but I just think that we can maybe get some ideas about how we want to do things, but I personally think we've got a lot on our plate, and to start looking for someone in January.
we have to be organized and ready to hit the ground in January.
Absolutely.
We have to do the work this year to get ready for January.
I'm not saying that, I'm
Right.
just saying that I think we need to concentrate on this bill. Whatever happens, happens, but I think that's.
So do you think the divide and conquer approach of do we need a committee to focus on one thing and a committee to focus on another? You mentioned building too, so that's sort of it seems as though we're all gonna need to put a little extra in on a certain kind of focus, and you're heavily focused on legislative. We all are focused on legislative, but you get the extra bonus points or whatever. I would be part of building. I think I have a couple thoughts on some of that, but I mean, because I know that that's a hard and fast, so we got to do something about that, and that's not fast here necessarily to find a good place or.
But at the same token, we can't look now for July 1.
No, and it may require us to.
There's lots of options.
Yeah.
I would want the committee to have confidence that you have a good team here. Okay. It's thin, but you have a really good team. Our developers are thin, and we need to beef that up. We really do. But the train will keep running. The customer service will continue. The accounting and the disbursement of funds will still happen. Those mechanics are all in place, and they will continue to work. So I think the future of Iowa land records, I've used the term before, it's tenuous. There are risks that we're facing, limits and resources being one of them. But it's not a crisis. Okay, you have very good people to keep the train running. So have confidence in that.
I think we do, and I think that's what makes it bearable to even ponder these next steps. Is the fact that we do have a team that is in good place.
I mean,
and maybe we don't appreciate them enough. but thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Like somebody needs to maybe take a lead for it, whether it be. And all of us, I mean, there's still quite a few here that we'd have to put all the pieces together, so we're not, let's say, all doing recruiting or that we're doubling up and doing the same thing. So again, whether that takes a committee, we are the committee, if there's a subcommittee.
I don't mean
or
that we
just
get
say
things at once. I didn't mean it that because we can.
Well, and some of us have better skill sets. I mean, like
Yeah.
maybe someone really loves the details of the HR of that job description. Some don't like to deal with that part of it. Some want to talk about, do we know some individual people? Or how else, right, do we have other ways? So it seems like maybe we need to think about what our individual skills are best and then work on. Yes, we have to stick together, but we also could maybe, that's why I said divide and conquer. I don't mean I'm not gonna be a part of this. You guys do it. I'm gonna go over here and talk about office space. Yeah. That's not what I mean at all. I just think that's something that I'm more skilled towards than writing that job description. I'm good with words, but it needs to be shorter. And I mean, I talked with an HR professional about, what's the process like? And he's a large bank HR guy. And so he kind of walked me through it. And so I kind of have a sense for, some of the stuff that is to come that I wouldn't have otherwise thought of because I don't hire professional people on that level for my office, and I haven't in the past work. All my business work has been more small scale.
Well, I feel like all of us have deputies and all of us have somebody that we have probably handpicked that we'd like to succeed in. So I think Phil should be part of maybe at least giving us some ideas of people to ensure we have a lot of ideas.
Right. And so maybe that's maybe a small group that could sit with Phil and work on some of that detail. Would that be more manageable? Just because I mean, this is kind of a lot of cats to haul down to Des Moines.
I guess I'm gonna say I'm committed to process. I think it's important that particularly the elected leadership be actively involved in this. I kind of said that in the memo. But you're not alone. And I've done this before, believe it or not. So we can do it. We can do a search. We can figure out different office space. This is all doable. And I will help you as much as I possibly can. I do need to just mention without getting too specific, but there was a comment in the chat pod, and I'll just read it as is. Says, with all due respect to the committee members, would it be possible for this to be tabled until after we meet this week so all reporters can have some input?
Like input on the agreement.
I am inferring from the comment that would be related to the amendment.
So that is a question of the executive authority. You want, I mean, I would expect that everyone has been talking with this week. But it is up to you guys. And you feel like we need to delay a decision.
This agenda's been out for how long? I mean, we were all elected to be on this committee by our districts. I don't feel like, I mean, what are we gonna do? Get into the weeds at our meeting? And I mean, I think we've got
it's a tight
executive
timeline.
board and I mean, I wasn't a part of whatever, the executive leadership meeting, but I mean, I trust our executive leadership.
Well,
Through this process.
I don't see anything controversial in here. I don't
either.
I don't see anything controversial in here.
We got work to do and
These are business decisions.
Yeah.
That need to be made for us to move forward.
I see nothing controversial.
we don't meet again until November.
Yeah, right.
I mean, which I could see there being additional movements.
I mean,
Um,
is this discussion or anything about, I guess it's on the agenda? The call, or what, no, it's got.
Crossing on the
I can read the comment from Melissa. I've shared the meeting packet with my district and I haven't received any concerns. We need to move forward.
Okay,
Well, we're ready for a motion. I would get the motion to approve the project management agreement as written.
okay.
Who seconded?
Motion by Denise,
Thanks,
second
Jamie.
by Jamie to agree or approve the agreement as presented in the packet. Further discussion from the committee? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay, all in favor, oh, excuse me, a unanimous approval of that agreement to proceed. So next on the agenda is a 2025 budget amendment.
Okay, this is the final action item for today's agenda. So we've been doing good on time, and that was an opportunity to get through some other discussion items fairly quickly before we adjourn. I want to direct your attention to pages 87 and 88. The origin of this is that there was a memo prepared for the Finance Subcommittee when a budget amendment, a draft was presented, and the Finance Subcommittee did advance the budget amendment to you with a recommendation for approval. Subsequent to that time, basically what we've done is updated some numbers. So there's not a new budget request in here, but basically is an adjustment. We've identified a few additional things where we had actual numbers to put in for budgeted numbers, and we did that. The first couple of paragraphs, and I also want to point out that in this version of the memo, that anything that you see is in italics is something that we have added. So, and maybe it's hard to discern at some points, but if it's in italics, it's something that we made an adjustment to. I think really the big story is that, as I shared with you in the discussion about the chart and the prognostication, is that we've had a fairly good 7 months from an income perspective, and we've kept expenses under control. Projected gross income has increased by more than $87,000 since your May meeting. That's significant, really. And then projected expenditures have declined by $92,000. So if you look at the totals, I have not in projected income for the remainder of the calendar year. I have not made significant increases in projected income. I basically have kept the same numbers that I have posted, and the adjustments. There have been some adjustments in expenditures downwards. So the income is projected to be by the end of the year $1.86 million, and expenses are now projected to be $1.62 million. Projected net income, based on what we've experienced so far, and basically keeping other projections the same, we're projecting now net income of $231,000 in the budget by the time we get to the end of calendar year 2025. So I'm going to go through the actual chart itself now and walk you through some of the changes. As has been our convention in the past, anything you see in burnt orange is budget actual. Not a lot to say though. For July, we actually have completed the reconciliation, but the financial reports themselves have not been approved yet by the Finance Subcommittee. So they represent actuals, but they haven't been approved. So that's why the July numbers are in blue. then anything that you see in gray is a change that we made compared to the budget amendment that you adopted in May. Okay, it's not going back to the beginning. It's just a change from what you previously approved in May. So, as Samantha reported to you, I'm looking at the first page of the spreadsheet now, looking at the income side of the equation, and Lisa has it up on screen too. You may recall that with the help of Bankers Trust, we're earning a little bit more interest now. So I've increased the projected interest income by about $2,000 a month through the end of the year. Then you'll also see a small adjustment to the projected point of sale service fee. I'm sorry, the on-demand service fee in September. That's just an examination of last year, and I'm putting that projection in. It's not a big change. The e-recording service fee, you may recall that we were kind of looking at about $85,000 a month, but what we have done, I'm sorry, I've got to make sure I'm looking at the right line. The point of sale service fee is what I'm looking at now. The one that has the $9,000 and $10,000. Basically, the adjustment that we made is we examined that and said, okay, what did we do last year in that same month? And as an adjustment, we did did make a change there. If you want to do a comparison, the projected income in the point of sale service fee would be increased by about $20,000. The money market interest would increase by about $6,000. And then really we didn't make any other changes in the e-submission income, and we didn't make any changes from actual for any other item in the budget. So with that, as I said, projected income for the year would be about $1.86 million. So not a lot of change on the revenue side. So moving to expenses. You'll see I did make a change in the project management amounts, but the total amount at the end of the year is the same. And that just reflects the fact that I'm spreading my billing out because I plan to take some vacation in September. So it's just an estimated adjustment, no change in actual costs. Moving down to education and outreach. I did receive the authorization of our committee chair to attend the PREA conference, so the estimated travel expenses associated with that have been added. I think I originally had the number in August, but I moved it into September. Then continuing on, I'm moving down to go down just a little bit further to the external development and services.
Did you adjust the health insurance here? Or is that something like that?
For the new PEO.
The new health insurance?
Have you adjusted it?
No, I have not. Okay. I'm not making any assess. So the HR costs for positions haven't been changed. And I did not want to try to make a projection on that. And again, I would just say I'm trying to be conservative in that regard. Okay.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. I'm looking at a line that's called software development services now. So you've got to go down a little bit. Okay.
It's 91.
91.
So you may recall in May, we said, we're starting to accumulate resources. Maybe we can do a special third-party development project like the notification system as an example. Well, it turns out after we adopted the budget in May, we did the estimates. working with the vendors to find out how much that would likely cost. And it was clear that the amount that we budgeted wasn't going to add up to nearly enough. I'm not saying you can't do it, but the amount that we budgeted just was not right. So my recommendation right now is that I've taken that money out of the budget, okay, and it's just sitting there in the projected ending balance. As we go through the next month or two, if things hold, you might have enough money to do a special project, like the notification system. We're about there, but not yet. So I'm just saying, keep that in your mind. That is something that maybe we should get started on before the end of the year and not have to wait for a bill to pass. But I took it out of the budget, and that's why those are all zero now. Then on the technical consulting side, you may recall that we entered into an agreement with Kelly Wallace to help us do some technical work during the last half of this year, which we got a slow start on because he took the family vacation and whatnot. But he's back and he's making good progress on the transition of our Linux operating system. Also, Muna has not come back as quickly as we'd hoped. Nothing wrong there, but just not progressing. And so Kelly's going to be filling in on a couple other things to get done. For example, one of the things we have to do is we have to remove some imaging from the e-submission service because it's taking up too much space. Because the recorded documents are now on the Iowa Land Record Search application. So we don't really need it in both places. So he's removing that to create more space in the system for e-submission, and that will prevent things from breaking. So this is something we definitely want to do. I think our original thought that was that we would internalize that, but we have the resources. So if you go to the change line, really all I've done is move resources from one month to the other. The total amount is not really different. Okay, moving on. Now I am looking at the DB2 line, and we are doing two things here. DB2 is the main database that we have in our system. And the first thing we were doing here is that, as we predicted, we are now moving that out of the reserve fund back into the budget. So we're just paying for it directly out of the budget and preserving our reserve resources. I've added $2,000 to that budget that is beyond the licensing fee. I'm making a best estimate as to what this number is, but IBM is doing something now similar to what we experienced with our Linux provider, and that is that they are being more particular about monitoring the licenses that are being used. And they're requiring the use of a new software system to basically report on our license usage. That is going to cost us some money to implement. I don't know if this is the final number yet, but the purpose is there to have a placeholder so that we know that we are supposed to be doing that before we move forward. Okay. I am now down to local maintenance expenses. So the biggest change here, and if you go all the way over to the end line, you can see that there is a $25,000 reduction in the budget in that line item category. At the May meeting, I recommended to you to set aside $40,000 to use to supplement income for two of your local land record management vendors to help them complete the integration with their new APIs. As it turns out, one of them has agreed. They asked for additional funds. We said yes, but instead of 20,000, it's 15,000. And then in the other case, we had discussions with the other vendor. We took it right up to the point where we had a draft amendment ready to go. And then they declined. They said they would do it without any additional compensation. So that $20,000 can now be taken out of the budget and reallocated. And that really summarizes the main change in the local maintenance expenses. The last big couple of items are the payment gateway expenses for a point of sale system that 80 plus counties use, and then also for the expense associated with the Vericheck ACH payment system. Our expenses there have been going up. Point of sale merchant fees are not cheap. I guess I would say, as we reported previously, point of sale activity is up too. We're earning more income, but that also means that our merchant fees are going up too. Not the fee itself, but the amount that we have to pay. So I've increased both of those line items by a total of about $19,000. And that takes you to the budgeted expenses line. And as I mentioned before, we're looking at $1.62 million in total expenses, which is about $92,000 less than we projected in May. And now projected net income is around $231,000. And that, plus if we continue to stay on the track we're on right now, by the time we get to, let's just say October, we might be over $250,000. And that means that if you want to, we can take a hard look at maybe starting work on one of those special projects. But that is the budget amendment. I would request your approval.
All right, any questions or comments? Other than maybe woohoo? Yeah, that helps to have some real numbers in there more than just placeholders. So that's good. Anyone else?
Motion to approve 2025 budget amendment.
Travis has moved and Julia's seconding. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. All have approved unanimously. So on to policies and procedures.
Okay, we're down to discussion that now. So we can go as quickly as you want to. So as you go through your packet, one thing that's not in your packet but is in the appendix is that we did publish a new version of the policies and procedures to reflect the changes in terms of services that you previously approved. It is included in your appendix for your information, and I have nothing further to add about it except that policies and procedures are being reviewed by a special working group, which is the next item on the agenda. We happen to have the key person here, Jamie, who can give us an update on that.
Since policy procedures was done on chapter 1, that was included in your packet, kind of the notes that I took and generated from the discussion that the group has had. Also put in the synopsis distribution as well. So obviously nothing I can take action on today, but I would just encourage you to review. There's 2 people on the committee from each district. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to try and answer those questions. I do have notes that are directly on the actual chapter itself. If you would like me to send those out, I just try to compile them into this sort of memo that you got. And our next meeting is September 4th. I believe.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments on materials Jamie shared on chapter 1. Okay, thank you for sharing them. It's really good conversation. It's not super scintillating conversation. Can't really imagine, but it is good and important to plod through. So thank you and the committee members for doing that. Onto the ILR public document report.
Okay, I just want to add that, whatever is done through the working group relating to the PMP, we're happy to accept input. And I would anticipate that we will, present that information to the standard subcommittee at whatever point, that work is completed, as we would do for anybody else. So I appreciate the work that's being done, and I'm available to answer questions whenever it's appropriate.
Maybe is. But it is up to ESS to change policies and procedures. These are just recommendations that are coming from our association on room for improvement.
Sure.
It's a great idea.
Okay. So in the next two pages, you're looking at a larger spreadsheet. And we occasionally publish this, but one of the things that I think people have said that they missed in the new version of the Iowa Land Records website is that we don't have the same degree of search tips that we used to have. Now, I have to tell you that does not upset me, because I really don't think that the content that we had in that area was all that great. But we haven't given up on the idea of having search tips. So what I would just like to describe this as the precursor to the next generation of search tips. And what these two charts show you, basically in the blue and the green, is we have a definition for complete. And a document is complete when we have index information that's searchable, and you have an image to go with it. If we have that, then we consider a document complete. That doesn't mean it's perfect, because sometimes the index information is not as full as we would like it to be. But it is necessary, has the sufficient data necessary for us to post it online. In this particular chart, and this comment is for Jolene, is that you may see a completely white cell. And that doesn't mean that we don't have any records for that period. It just means that it's for some reason, less than 99%. Okay, complete. That's all that means. And I understand why any reporter might feel, oh, that makes it look like I didn't do anything. But that's not what the meaning of this is. And so the green is a measurement of completeness, and the blue is a measurement of public. Okay. And so I am not saying we're going to publish it broadly, but because it may not be ready for prime time. But I think it does give you a very quick picture about the depth of records and how far back they go for any particular county. And so in the case of Jolene, if I could just use her as my guinea pig.
Since we're pretty picking on her, let's keep it going. Woo!
But
Right.
yeah, Jolene was upset with me lately. But
We'll look at the report before you leave. Okay.
But what it means is that for whatever reason, there was a glitch that happened, right? And it tells us, hey, we need to go back and look at that again and see what we need to do to fix it. Now, in the old records, a lot of the white spaces they don't have them digitized. Okay. But for recent years, that means there's something going on. And I want to compliment Myrna. One thing that she's done since she took over is we have what we refer to as a complete report that she has automated so that we can generate it pretty much anytime we want to or need to. So just sharing this with you for anybody that looks at this, you might have a question, we can help you investigate and fill in the blanks. I will have to admit to you that we haven't done a lot to communicate this broadly because we don't have unlimited bandwidth to answer every question right away. So you're our first group. Here we go. All right. That's all I have to report on that.
So though this is just. So like, I don't feel I'm actually. All the way back to 1975, but that means the documents I have sent.
You're absolutely right about that. So
Like, I might have like my deeds, but I know I don't have like some of my mortgage funds.
right.
Correct.
So an example, Corey and I were working on this the other day. What would it mean? Well, a future version of search tips would say maybe from 2000 forward, complete, looks good, here's the percentages, but it might say from 1980 to 2000, that county only uploaded deeds and doesn't have a bunch of other stuff. It would be complete because we have what they sent us, but it doesn't mean it's the complete record. And so a future version of search tips is going to have those kinds of explanatory notes. So if you just look at this chart, it could be misleading. But on the other hand, there are counties who really do go back that far. And they've done the digitization and it looks good. So search tips is, to me, more of a story that needs to be told about each county and what the status of their records are, so that an abstractor or somebody entitled guarantee could look at the search tips and see, I know I'm reminded of the profile of that county, so that when I search in that county, I know that if I don't get a hit, there's a reason why. That's what we're looking for. Yeah.
Is this something you'll share this week at ISAC with the Association?
We can do whatever you want. I just would say we need to give the explanation so that it was interpreted correctly. Yeah. All right.
I think that, as Phil said, we don't have the bandwidth to help all 99 counties for all the years. A lot of you don't have the bandwidth to even figure it out where you're at.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we good?
Yeah,
let's keep moving then. So now I am on page 101. So I'm sharing this with you. This is not new. I actually shared this with you at the May meeting too. I'm just going to be like a bad penny. I'm not going to go away on this. And that is that I have asked the Standards Subcommittee to closely examine this because I have one main question, and that is if a local service provider withdraws from the maintenance contract, as one of our service providers has done, or if a county withdraws from the 28-year agreement, even the current version of House File 1031 still sort of says that counties should continue to upload records to the statewide database, as the bill says, or they have to facilitate the flow of records in each submission, which is a way possibly to say, even if a county is not in the 28E agreement, they still have to accept any submitted document from Iowa land records. My personal opinion is the language needs to be beefed up a little bit, but that is what the stated intent is. So we have APIs that we publish. They have technical specifications. We expect our partner counties and their service providers to use that API to send it to us or to process documents we send to them through the submission. That's how we do things. And the way we have communicated with counties and their service providers to date is through the contract. We put our specifications right in there. And in addition to that, we post the specifications on the web. That's what we do historically. Well, now in at least one case, I don't have a contract to provide that information. And so we are asking the question, what is another appropriate way for us to communicate with the county and their service provider about our expectations technically for their delivery of those records to us or for their processing of these submission records. So in chapter 2, which by the way, we're basically rewriting chapter 2 of the policies and procedures, we add definitions for what an API is, what the county land record management system is, which is the same as the local service provider. And then we are saying, okay, now we're going to start publishing a document separate from the contract that spells out what the scope of work and the specifications are. And if you look at items A through O, those are the main sections of the contract that we have. So I'm not inventing anything new. I'm just cross-referencing back to that. And if you were to look at your appendix on page 132 of your appendix, which you don't have to look at right now, but if you want to see what does our contract say today, that's where you would find it. Okay. So what we're saying then in the new version of 2.3 subsection 2 and 2.3 subsection 3 is that even if you're not in the 28 agreement, you have to follow the scope and specifications. And even if you're a service provider that is not in a maintenance agreement, you have to follow those requirements. And we're going one step further. And we're saying that any county that has a service provider that is not in a maintenance agreement, they need to certify to the county, not to us, that they agree to conform to our scope and specifications. So in 2 meetings of the standard subcommittee, we've shared this draft with them. And I have a particular county who I will not name that I've had separate meetings with to encourage them, please review all of this and tell me what you don't like or tell me if you agree or don't agree. I'm doing the same thing today. I'm saying, hey, ESS committee, review this. Tell me where I'm wrong. Or give me some suggestions for another way to tell counties and service providers what our expectations are. Because if I don't have a contract, or if you withdraw from the 28-year agreement, the legislation sort of says you still have to participate. What do you think?
This, I have solutions, but will this replace my contract? Or is this, if solution doesn't have a maintenance agreement, then this falls into place?
In your case, I don't think it would really affect you because we still have a maintenance agreement I'm still going to put the scope and specifications in there. But it does mean that I will have published this, that we will have published this in another location. So there's no doubt.
So it's clarification. Makes it clear that everybody's playing with the same set of rules, basically.
I've been told by certain people that, hey, the bill, the way it reads, is still a statewide system. Okay. I'm going to just say we can't have a statewide system that operates as a statewide system unless you have a set of technical standards that says, here's what we want everybody to do it this way. We can't afford to have 99 different ways for people to participate.
Right, and we would want, like, for our searchers to be able to consistently find things by typing in whatever they're looking for in the same way. So it would that kind of has to speak our language, right? So I'm sure that would head nodding by our ILTA.
More consistency in searching is always good. Always.
Any comments, questions? Seems like good work being done by our standards committee again. A tough.
If you have a better way to do this, that's what we're saying. You can think of a better way. I'd like to know.
I think it's good that you're communicating it to, it's just, if it is a repeat from what our personal agreement is with our service provider, it's good. Redundancy is not a bad thing, as long as it's consistent. It's the same message. You're saying the same thing to them as you're saying to us.
Their paths would be the same. I'm going to talk about one other component of this in just a minute, and in fact, let's just go to that. So if you skip ahead in your document to page 107, this is a discussion that we're having with our development team as well. But what we've attempted to do with this chart is to identify every data element in the ILR system. And if you're a database nerd like I am, then you know that the way APIs are set up, that there are certain data elements that are required, there are certain that are optional, and there are certain data elements that are conditional. Okay. I've added another layer to this discussion, and that is the letter E. And the letter E means expected. So our API doesn't require, and by that I mean a hard require, that you provide us with post names or that you provide us with post location information, section, township, and range. Those data elements, technically speaking, are optional. Now, we've always treated them as expected. I mean, it's natural. If you want to search on that, you have to have it. So, for the first time, what this is intended to do is to say these data elements are just optional, they're expected. Now, we're not making every data element expected, crazy stuff that PREA happen to put in their system and we don't use, we're not going to suddenly change around and require that or make it expected. So the homework assignment that I have given to the standards subcommittee and a particular county, if they choose to accept it, is to go through this list of data elements and tell me which ones we shouldn't expect. Because I want this document to be the communication that goes along with the API that tells every service provider in county, hey, if you've got this data, we expect it. Now, if you don't index it, we aren't making anybody go back and fix it. Okay. I have other ways to deal with that. But we want to clearly communicate to the counties and the service providers that these things are expected or were necessary, required. Required in the context of our API means that it's really important and we have a validation rule built into the system. And that if you send us data and it doesn't include a requirement element, it will fail. It will throw an error message. And that's why we can't make everyday element required because it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. But if we say expected, then the service providers and the counties would know what to do. So the information that is sort of in the middle, if you look here where it says grantor, grantee, that's the name of the data schema from our system. It's nothing you have to understand, but it would be meaningful to a technical person. And then on the far right, these are what our API says are the technical specifications for each data element. How many characters it has, it is allowed to have, for example. Okay. I didn't write any new policy in that column. That's already in our API. The only thing new that doesn't already exist are the data elements that say E. Okay. And I'm looking for your input to say, okay, is there anything here that we should not expect? And that's all I'm doing. So the standards subcommittee at their last meeting, I'm talking to Jamie now, they said, we don't want to make any final decisions on this or on chapter 2 until the working group has reviewed this draft. Okay. So the language in the new version of chapter 2 has been provided to both the standards subcommittee and the working group. So I'm looking for their input and nothing is imminent. The next standards meeting is in October. We'll see where everybody stands. I'm going back up now because we're going quick. So if you go back up to page 104 and 105, I've shared this with the standards subcommittee and others as well. I have not incorporated any specific language for an amendment, but I am suggesting that there needs to be some cleanup items in House File 1031. Two of them are to clarify language where it says that we should be requiring participation in e-submission and uploading records. Tell me what your face means. Oh, there's a
see line. That's all. I'm just trying to read.
this.
It's squinty eyes. So.
The question I see is, should our study group be looking at policy as if the bill passed? I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
As it stands today, what could be changed to make it better? That's probably
Existing
the
policy,
existing policy.
just
But
review of
I
the
guess-
existing policy. Well, you don't want to do something that's wasteful if things are going to get changed. I mean, there would be that about it. I don't know if everybody's got loads of time to, what if? Right. It's up to you. I mean, that would be my thought. I'm not sure I'd want to do that.
Okay, so I'm presenting this document to you as a potential set of what I would call refining and perfecting amendments probably doesn't get brought up until something else changes in the bill, right? But if another change, like a fee change issue gets approved, then why not try to perfect the legislation?
Okay.
So
it's good to have a list.
okay. That's all. That's all I need to say about it. I am happy to answer any questions.
So have we completed what you want, all of this? Or you're pausing?
I'm almost done. So the only other thing is I wanted to just say, yes, I just wanted to say that the standards subcommittee did review the cost sharing formula. They did talk about the concept of incorporating some sort of altered cost sharing method based on number of documents recorded, which we have reviewed in the past. So I wanted to report to you that had been done. That we also talked to the standards subcommittee about what current policy is relating to credit card payments. And just to give you an update that we are not quite done with the e-submission API implementation. And we have one service provider that has started to work on the county upload API. And then last but not least, in your appendices is a draft report from PRIA about statewide indexing systems because they're working on a policy to help promote other states doing something similar to what we've done. I found it interesting because a legislator said to us that if your system is so good, why hasn't anybody done what you've done? Well,
it's hard.
It's hard to do, and other states are looking at doing something like this. So anyway, the draft report's there for you to review. And now I'm done.
With just 7 minutes left of the meeting, does anybody have any questions? Comments?
I did see an email from Priya today, and one of the first thing was about property fraud notification system. So I was hoping we could get that for you.
I think everyone has people coming to their counter weekly.
I feel there's a new commercial.
Oh, yeah, probably.
I just heard that on radio. Yeah.
Well, people are having more examples of actual things occurring. So that fuels the fire too. Even in
I mean, yeah, I think I was so far.
Yeah, so far we've been good.
Words.
Would you like to adjourn the meeting?
I would like to ask, yes, I was just gonna say, hearing nothing further, is there a motion to adjourn? Amy, Travis, motion to adjourn. The meeting is adjourned.